Welcome back, friends. Today's video is going to be an oldie but goodie. I am finally bringing back my PJs and coffee time. I'm going to have a combination of PJs and coffee times where I may be sitting here on my bed, in my guest room, my bed in my room, or sometimes I just might be on the floor. When I do those, I'll just call those floor chats. But nonetheless, welcome back to PJs and Coffee Times. For my first video coming back, this was definitely not the video that I had envisioned myself doing, but as God would have it, here we go. Let's have a few housekeeping rules. Right now, I ask that you go into your kitchen, find yourself the best beverage for you, whatever that might be, your special beverage. Run into the bedroom, slip into something comfy. As you all can see, I'm wearing my PJs. By the way, these PJs are compliments of TJ Maxx. I wear a lot of TJ Maxx things. Mug, compliments of TJ Maxx as well. Hair, compliments of Fatima. Lips, scary. I have on a very dark brown lip. I don't normally do that, but I'm kind of going through things, cleaning out things. This was a lipstick that I had, and I thought, let me see what I feel about it tonight. And I may trash it if I don't like it. Comment below and tell me what you think. I'm not really feeling this dark lip on me, but it could be that I've just forgotten how to wear lipstick. It's been so long since I've just indulged in lipstick. Now that you have your beverage, got your PJs or whatever you consider comfy on, let's just have a chat, okay? There's a lot to chat about in this video. Warning, it's probably gonna be long. Honestly, against my better judgment, these notes, I know they look messy, but I was jotting down thoughts over the last few weeks. And I knew I wanted to come back in September, before September ended, with my very first PJs and coffee time video. When I discovered that this was going to be the video that I had to do, I genuinely had to write down some of my thoughts, because I know this type of video, what I'm going to be talking about, is definitely going to be hard for me to talk about. I may start rambling. I want to dedicate this video to a very good friend of mine, James first, but then mine after. He passed away with pancreatic cancer. And basically, by the time we realized he had it, we were already losing him. Woody, miss you and love you. So the topic of this video today is, are your friends dying? Which sounds like a very morbid title. The older we get, the more of a reality it becomes. There's not a specific age that anyone die. I mean, there's not a book that says, oh, you die when you're 100. You die when you're 75, you die when you're 20, you die when you're 30. People die at random ages, at random times, through random circumstances. I think in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I think for a lot of us, we saw death very real. I think we looked at death in a whole different way. One thing for sure, we can't escape it. If we have life, we will eventually have death. I want to say, before we get too much further, I'm not a therapist. Basically, what I'm going to be doing tonight, because I'm actually filming this at night before I get ready for bed. Spoiler alert, I'm not drinking coffee. I actually have a Starbucks that I was drinking earlier. It was a pumpkin spice frap. And I decided that I wasn't going to have any coffee, even though I do have some decaffeinated coffee in there. I decided that I really needed to have some water. And that's what I'm drinking tonight. And my mug, representing PJs and coffee time. I'm not a therapist, and I don't want anyone to mistake what I'm about to say tonight, the things that I'm going to share with you, in any way that I'm telling you how to handle life and death or what you should do. I'm basically going to be sharing my experiences with it, my thoughts on it. I'm at the age of 57. I do realize that a lot of my, I want to say audience, is that the proper word? I don't think it is. A lot of my subscribers, I guess, are probably within my age group. That being said, I think the older we get, we hit into like a certain age group where death is more real. Illnesses are more real. Things are just, sometimes it feels like it's just hitting you in your face. I think that's what's been happening to me for about the last month. It's just have been really real to me. I'm going to start by sharing my own personal journey of finding out I had breast cancer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to also talk about my brother-in-law passing away. And I'm also going to talk about my friend Woody, who passed away. I'm going to kind of start by talking about when my brother-in-law passed away. The reason why I want to start with that is because that was before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And even though I knew that death happens, I lost my parents, James had lost his parents, death had been in my life. But I think somewhere in my mind, it was still so far away. When my brother-in-law passed away, that was so unexpected. And it did hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was so taken back by it. But I think the realization of it is that I needed to be there for my sister. So I didn't have time to break. I didn't have time to just waddle in that moment of knowing that death is so real. What I had to do was face it, deal with it, and help my sister get through it. The other day when I was just kind of thinking back and planning this video, I started to think about why is it that my friend's Woody's death seemed to be affecting me on a more personal level than when my brother-in-law passed away and I was closer to my brother-in-law. And that was like he was truly family, and Woody is a friend, or was a friend that was like family. What I came to realize is that the reason why Woody's death affected me so much more than my brother-in-law's death, of course, within that time frame, I ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. At that point, the day that I was told that I had breast cancer, I fell to my knees in tears. I cried for a good while. I just broke. And I remember asking God why. And I remember thinking, I'm not a bad person. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I'm not knocking people that do. I'm just stating how I felt when I found out I had breast cancer. And I screamed, God, why me? I mean, I screamed it to the top of my lungs, why me? At that moment, I feared death. I thought, God, I can't die now. I mean, I'm too young. I am in my prime. I have a grandson. I have a son. Like, why would this happen to me? Thankfully enough, my diagnosis was very good, and I am sitting here now a cancer-free person. When our friend Woody died about a few weeks ago, death was more real to me. We had lived through the pandemic, but so many people died. It was almost like literally you turn on your TV and the numbers were growing and growing and growing. Death was such a real thing. So when Woody died, it really took me to the place of, I'm so blessed and I'm so thankful that I'm cancer free. It reminded me that tomorrow's not promised to us. I went into this thought of, what would happen if my cancer came back? What if I have cancer in my body right now? Like, I started having like very random, scary thoughts running through my head. And I'll be honest with you, I can't say that I'm over that at this point. I think just the whole realization of him being diagnosed, we find out that he's dying. This was a guy that was very healthy, very in shape, and it was just so unexpected that it just made me realize how close we are every day to death. And so that's why I wanted to do this video, because I needed to talk my feelings out, but I also feel if I'm feeling these feelings, I know someone else is. We're all within that same age group. We're seeing our friends die. We're seeing people that we went to school with, our best friends, our neighbors. Where I am now in my life, having gone through breast cancer, I honestly can feel the anxiety at times of that fear of death, that I don't want to die anytime soon. I know I have no control over it, but I have to say it's very in my face sometimes. Not all the times, but I do have those days where I literally wake up and I am thinking, God, I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful that you've given me this day. And I think about all the things I still want to do in my life. Like I think about me being in this apartment and how at peace I am in this apartment. And then I think, I don't want to lose this. I want to live through this. I want to see where I can go in the next year. I want to have the opportunity to see my grandson grow up. I want to have the opportunity to see my grandson get married and have children. So all of those thoughts, when they go through my head, having lived through these last few weeks and having lived through the pandemic, having lived through having breast cancer, having lost my brother-in-law, I'm just finding myself in this little place sometimes where I just get so fearful, so afraid. I feel very vulnerable when I'm sitting here telling you all these emotions that are going on inside of me, because I don't know how it's going to come across. I don't know how I actually sound saying these things, because it's really something that I've been dealing with a lot. And I feel the need to just be able to open up and talk about it. I honestly feel like I'm rambling a little bit right now, even with my notes. Like I'm looking at my notes and I'm just thinking, girl, you all over the place. You're not following the script. I just don't do well with that. If I'm rambling, my apologies. I really wanted to just kind of sit here tonight and just get my feelings out. Few hours later, I'm back. It's actually the next morning. I'm sure you could tell that. I am actually having coffee now. I'm actually drinking some pumpkin spice cake from Nespresso. It is such a good coffee. I recently ordered some really good flavors from the Nespresso company and I'm just loving them. I did add a little bit of my pumpkin spice creamer as well as a pumpkin spice vanilla sweetener into my coffee, and it is so divine. Having the fall ambiance going on my TV. I'm trying very hard this morning to kind of calm myself, because I found last night I was just getting so overwhelmed. This topic is such a deep thing for me. I think because I'm literally living through it right now, it's really overwhelming sometimes to talk about, to figure out how to get my words out. I don't know that I can actually pick back up where I actually left off last night. Even though I've watched the video back, I feel like, how do I go back into the topic? At what point do I bring myself back in? So without really knowing how to do that, I'm just gonna bring myself back in. For the past few weeks, I have found myself being really in my head with some very in-depth thoughts and having some very deep conversations with myself. I've thought things like, why is it that we are losing our families, our friends? Why is it that we don't have control over our time here on earth? We live every day, and even though we have control over a lot of things, something so important, we don't have control over it. And I've just been so in thought with that. Not in a bad way as if I'm angry, but just the realization, this is really how life is. And I think in this age that I'm in now, and many of you all might be, that those are some thoughts that can be very common for us, because we realize that our time on earth is less than our time that we've spent. Like we're, as they say, running out of time. And the reality of seeing our loved ones and our friends and our neighbors, people that are the same age as us, some people that are younger than us, and seeing them die. And it seems like so sudden that we just can kind of really get in our heads about it. We can really fear, so to speak, of death. And we can fear that we're not ready. And we can fear that we want more time. And we can think about how important it is for us to have more time. But at the same time, we don't have control over how much time we actually have. That was a lot said right there. I think that was a bit of a tongue twister, but I hope what I said kind of made sense, even though I'm listening to my thoughts now and I'm thinking maybe it didn't make sense. But again, I'm speaking out loud. I'm speaking from true emotions that I've had. Honestly, I think in getting those thoughts in my head, I found myself kind of slacking in some of the things that I know that are good for me, that help me stay grounded, help me stay in check, help me stay in tune with the person that I am. And I think things like that happen when we do get overwhelmed, when we get in our heads and we don't know how to maneuver through those things on a day-to-day basis. It can sometimes cause us to just drift away from the very things that keep us grounded and rooted, if that makes sense at all. Again, am I rambling? I don't know. But what I do know is these thoughts make me feel very, very anxious. I am not a person, and I have prided myself. I don't use the word anxiety very lightly. I actually, for a long time, wouldn't even say it on my channel. But I will say that after going through breast cancer, after living through a life event such as breast cancer, I have realized the things that recently happened has sparked my anxiety because of the thoughts that I've been having. The anxiety just seems to just creep in, and sometimes it becomes very overwhelming. So I'm kind of learning that new side of me. I've always been that person that has been so much in control, but I do find myself sometimes just sitting and thinking, I honestly don't have any control at all. Even though I have control over some minor things, but there's a big picture of it that I don't have control over. I have to be honest and say that I really do think about them a lot. And I'm sure that some of you probably do too. We might not want to admit it. We might not want to say it out loud because it can sound like maybe we don't have enough faith. Maybe we don't believe in God. And it's not that. It's just us being real. It's just being who we are, who we were designed to be. We weren't put on this earth to just have the perfect thoughts, the perfect moments, and never have humbling experiences, never have moments of doubt. We were never designed to be that way. We were designed as humans, and we will have those moments and we will have those thoughts, and it's perfectly fine. And I'm learning to accept the fact that it is fine, that it is okay. I try to keep myself busy so that these thoughts don't overcome me sometimes. And then I find myself sometimes just sitting on the couch, just having my moments. And I do believe in how important it is to have those moments. I just know that we can't waddle in those moments. We can't stay in those moments, that we have to figure out a way to pull ourselves out of those moments. And that's where I say, and I speak this with the most love and sincerity. If you are going through something and you feel that you're not able to cope, then I encourage you with all my heart to seek therapy, to seek a professional, to find someone that can truly help you get through what it is that you're going through. The truth of the matter is, when we get older, we are faced with a lot more things than when we're younger. I'm going to slip in a little story time here because I just want to share this with y'all. It pertains to how my feelings about death and life, and just when it first started to come into play, and how like over the years I just pushed it back away and now it's coming back into play again. So when I was a little girl, I grew up very close to my grandparents on my mother's side. My father's side, my grandmother passed away when I was young, and my grandfather passed away when I was young. Now, my grandfather lived to be 105 on my dad's side, but I was only 5 years old when he passed away. So I didn't have that much time with him, I guess, for lack of better words. So I didn't have the same experiences with my dad's parents as I did with my mom's parents. My mom's parents, I saw them almost every day. They were my babysitter when my mother would work, whenever I was sick or whatever. They were the people that took care of me. They owned a farm, so the grandkids took care of the farm. In the summer, we did the tobacco, we worked the gardens, we worked the animals, like all those kinds of things we did as grandchildren. And so my life with my mom's parents was very, very active. And it was such a loving experience. And seeing them often, sometimes every day, we took them to the grocery store. There was just so much interaction with them. they were literally like my parents. It was almost as if I didn't see a difference between my mom and my dad and my grandmother and my grandfather. And in my mind, I really never envisioned them passing away. I never thought one day I'm gonna wake up and I won't have grandparents. I just never envisioned that at all. I just thought they'll live forever. As I got older, I watched them get old, but I still would see them being such strong people. And I remember one day when my grandmother got sick. That was the first time I really had a thought that I could actually lose my grandparents, that grandparents get older and they die, that people get older and they die. And not just that they get older and they die, people do die. I was faced with that one day standing in my grandmother's bedroom. My grandmother had made a statement. She had been not feeling well. We'd gone over to check on her, and we realized that she was a lot sicker than what she was letting on to us. And so my mother had said, we need to take you to the hospital. And I remember my grandmother looking up at me and saying, as I was helping her get dressed, instead of asking for her dress, she asked for her burial robe. I remember standing there, I think I was, I don't know, about somewhere between 13 and 15, I guess. I don't really remember how old I was when this happened, but I remember just staring at her, and I remember just thinking, Grandma, what are you talking about? I remember thinking I could lose one of the most important people in my life. I started to shake and I started to cry. And I was like, Grandma, you can't die, you can't die. And as we followed the ambulance to the hospital, I remember praying the entire way, asking God, please don't take my grandmother. I'm not ready to lose her. And God spared her. God gave her back to us for several years to come. That was my first experience of understanding, of feeling that death could happen. Of course, as I got older, I moved away from home. I wasn't seeing my family every day like I used to. I was married now to my son's father. We traveled with the military. Life was very different. But I still talked to my grandparents all the time. But I still had that deep-rooted love for my grandparents. And every chance I got, I came home to see my family. Fast forward to when I was 6 months pregnant with my son. I remember thinking, I can't wait till my grandparents meet my baby, that they're going to be so excited. And my grandfather had this thing about where he named all of us really crazy nicknames. Like, my name is Sheila, and my grandfather called me Sheilip. Not Sheila, but Sheilip. And for all of us, we had our names. Like, my brother was called Micey. I remember thinking, what is the name that my grandpa is going to give to my baby? And then at 6 months pregnant, I got a phone call from my parents saying that my grandfather had passed away. It broke my heart. My doctor didn't advise that it was safe for me to travel because I had some, not really complications, but I was showing signs that I could go into early labor. So they just did not advise me to travel. So I was not able to travel to my grandfather's funeral. I was able to handle it a lot more because of what I had experienced with my grandmother and realizing that I could lose them and that they were getting older. And my grandfather was 98 years old. So I think also I felt as though he had lived a very long life and it was just time for him to go. Fast forward 5 years later, my grandmother passed away. I think that was kind of like the beginning of a new life for me, that I wouldn't have my grandparents anymore. But I also now had a child that had grandparents, which were my parents. And so I knew that it was very important for me to have him to focus a lot of time with his grandparents, to have those memories that I had with my grandparents. Even though I lived so far away, I really pushed my son spending time with his grandparents, and he would go for the summer because I wanted him to develop those memories like I had. Fast forward to the time where I saw my parents literally getting older, literally getting weaker, literally seeing and realizing that there was not going to be many more years that I would have them. But I still think that somewhere in my mind, I convinced myself that they're not going anywhere. They're invincible. They're going to live forever. I remember one time my father saying to me, now my father was the youngest out of 12 brothers and sisters. And after he lost his last living brother, he was left an orphan, an only child. No brothers, no sisters left. I remember him saying to me one time, I wish God would go ahead and take me. I have nobody left on earth. And I looked at him and I said, but Daddy, you have me, you have mom, you have all of us. And I really, at that time, didn't understand what he really meant. I think somewhere I was kind of feeling a little bit jaded. We're not important to you. But what I wasn't realizing is that even though he had all of us, he lost a big part of who he was as an individual, who he grew up being. Having those brothers and sisters, he no longer had anyone from that part of his life left to share the dreams, to share the memories of what their childhood was like. Now that I'm older and I'm seeing things differently, I can see how that must have felt for him. After losing them, it became a reality to me. You do lose something when you're left without parents. I have not lost a brother or a sister, but losing my brother-in-law was kind of like losing a brother. And even though I did manage to get through that in a different way, and mainly, again, like I said, was because I was taking care of my sister, I find myself sometimes having moments where now I sit back and I think about it. I feel like, wow, I lost my brother-in-law. I lost a family member, and he was young. So I know that was a little bit of a crazy story time, rambling type of a situation, but I'm saying all of that because I want you to understand how over the years my thought process have come to play, and that how the many ways I've visioned death, seen death, and understood death, and dealt with the reality of it, only to come here at this point in my life where now this is a whole different obstacle for me, because I am at a place where I will see many more people dying. And I know that at some point, I, being the youngest child in my family, not that it will, we have no way of knowing how it's going to happen. I could be a child that's left without a sibling. I've already lost my parents. I have one brother and one sister. I could be alone without them. It's just more of a reality the older we get. I feel like it's very important for me to talk about my feelings out loud, and in doing so, there may be a way that I can help someone else get through something. As we have life events in our life, and this is kind of flipping back a little bit, I do feel that when we have life events such as cancer, stroke, heart attacks, things of that nature, I think when we see other people having those life events, I think that we're forced to have a different mindset from all of those things happening. Some of us can and will develop a certain amount of fear from those life experiences. I think it's okay for us to admit about our fears. I think it's okay for us to acknowledge them. And I think that's kind of what I'm doing today, is just acknowledging this is what life is for me right now. These are thoughts that actually do happen. I'm not losing precious time wrapped up in the thoughts where it's assuming me, but I am finding myself in those thoughts at any given moment. And I'm learning how to transition through those thoughts. That was a lot right there. And I still feel like it was a little bit rambly, but I just have so many thoughts running through my head that it's really hard for me to speak it out loud. I mentioned that we have no control over our true time here on earth, but we do have control over some of the many things that we go through in life. And I want to talk about some of the things that we have control over. We have control over things such as making sure that we are going to the doctor on a daily basis, making sure that when something doesn't feel right by us, whether you wake up with a certain pain that you've never had before, that you act on that you don't just push it under the rug, that you don't let the fear of what it could be keep you away from finding out what it really is. It can be a life-saving moment. I know for me, finding out that I had breast cancer when I was at a stage 1B was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Had I ignored things or not gone to get my mammogram, I could have had a whole different outcome. So I encourage you to make sure that you are paying attention to your body, listening to your body, going to get your annuals, mammograms, colonoscopies, physicals, pap smears, making sure you check your prostate, things that are within your power. You have control of those things, and you need to make sure that you're taking care of those things, making sure that you're in check with your mental health. We're all built very differently in how our mental state operates. Listening to your doctor. It's one thing to go to the doctor. It's one thing to find out your health panel, to find out things that the doctor's recommending to you. It's another whole thing to follow what the doctor ordered. If the doctor's telling you your cholesterol's high, then you do something about it. You follow the diet that he gave to you. If he's telling you that you're borderline diabetic, then it's very important that you follow the instructions that he gave to you. These are things that you have control over. If he tells you that you're overweight, because we know that weight comes as we get older, and it gets harder to get rid of it as we get older. It gets harder to get rid of as we gain more and more weight. But if he's telling you that you need to exercise more, you need to do something to lose the weight, act accordingly. These are things, again, I'm going to say it over and over again. These are things that we have control over. How can we get through our day-to-day? How can we maneuver through all the things that life is throwing at us as we get older, or just as we live in the world that we live in right now? One of the main things I want to say is place God first. God has to be the first thought of our day and the last thought of our night every single day. Having him so readily on our mind can ease us through so much pain. Finding time to meditate, finding time to have a quiet moment. I found myself not doing those things. Like I said, I think that's why I became very anxious. That's why I wasn't handling things as well as I wanted to. It's because I had neglected some of those things. I wasn't having my moment of meditation. I wasn't going into my quiet space. I was rushing through in the mornings. I was rushing out the door. My hours at work had changed, and I was now having to be at work at 8 instead of 8:30. So I was finding myself just on the go and not taking time for me. And so what would happen is all these thoughts would just kind of build up, and then all of a sudden they would just crash. And when they crash, that's when I would have that form of, like, I felt like I was breathing heavy. I felt like I couldn't focus. I couldn't get myself together. In conclusion, I was having a minor little anxiety attack. And finding the courage to open up to your friends and your family about how you're feeling about losing loved ones, about your fear of death, about the fear of getting sick. Learning how to talk about your feelings out loud. Keeping things inside can be very, very hard on the body, on the mind, and it can really do some damage. And coming to the realization that you're not alone in whatever you go through, because whatever it is that you're feeling, you can bet that there's someone else feeling the same way. That's why I wanted to open up and do this video today. It's because I know that as I'm sitting here this morning, there is someone right now going through the same thing, having the same emotions, having the same thoughts that I'm having. And I feel that if I can speak out loud about it on my channel, then that can help you maybe to talk to a friend, a family member, open up to your spouse about it. I think sometimes we do feel that if we say certain things, people are going to place us in a certain category. For me, I know talking about this right now, I feel that some people this could come across very wrong. It could come across like I don't have control, like that I'm losing it. I'm just speaking out loud of the emotions that I do have. And this is something that I'm gonna share that is so important. You're gonna probably think, Sheila, what? Remember to live. I've just talked so much about dying and so much about dealing with death. And I realized when I was having all of these thoughts that it's very easy in that moment to not realize that you are alive and that it's very important to just live. Wake up in the morning, give God the glory, start out on your day, smile at the people that are in front of you, live your life. Try doing some of the things that you thought you could never do. Go places that you thought you'd never go, or that you wanted to go, but you just didn't think you could go. We know that tomorrow is not promised to us. We don't have any control over tomorrow. But if you wake up today and you just live, if you don't have tomorrow, at least you lived for the day that you had. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out right now. Even though I tried coming back this morning in hopes of not rambling, I do feel like I did still ramble quite a bit. That's the nature of the game, I guess. I'm a rambler. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so right now. If you're going through something, again, I encourage you. I open up my channel to you. I open up my email to you. I'm gonna put my email across the page. If you want to send me a private message through Instagram, whatever you're feeling, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so. If you want to comment below, I know commenting below can be a little bit vulnerable because other people are able to read your comments. Although I've not experienced anybody being ugly with anybody in my comments, but I do know that this is one of those subjects that can really go left if we aren't careful, because people can really impose a lot of thoughts about how all the stuff that I've shared today. But nonetheless, I do want to open my channel up to you. Feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a person that can tell you how to get through. I can just share my experiences with you, and I can be there to be a listener for you if you are going through something. Just remember some of the key factors that I shared with you all as far as just taking care of yourself, making sure that you're doing everything that you can to take care of your health, your mind, and your body. And that's really truly all that we can do. I preface this video by saying, most importantly, make sure that you live